Hi, it's Poohead189 here, and this is Warhammer for Idiots. Pardon the name, it's not technically right, but I have a lot of friends who want to know what Warhammer is, and I decided to make a very quick guide for the person who isn't big on time or attention spans, but they want a working knowledge of the Warhammer world. So, let's start off. What is Warhammer? Warhammer is a fantasy universe, originally a tabletop game started in 1983 by the company called Games Workshop. Not to be confused with the very popular Warhammer 40,000 or 40K, created by the same company 4 years later in 1987. Sometimes my friends call Warhammer 40,000 just Warhammer, and that is somewhat right in a sense, but technically wrong. Warhammer 40,000 is the science fiction equivalent of Warhammer Fantasy. Back in the old days, Warhammer Fantasy and 40K used to share the same universe, but that is no longer the case, though the company still likes to poke fun at the idea sometimes with certain events. I'll explain further on 40K in my videos for that universe, but for now let's talk about the original universe, which is Warhammer Fantasy. Warhammer Fantasy, much like 40K, is a grim and dark fantasy universe. In fact, Warhammer created the term grim dark. It's a universe where the world is constantly under attack by the forces of evil, and even the quote-unquote good guys are seen in more of a gray morality than purely good. It's a world of strife, some dark humor, and pretty much every faction is racist, xenophobic, and on the brink of collapse. Imagine taking Lord of the Rings, adding in some Monty Python, yet everyone is at war constantly, and there is essentially no hope for the good guys, and you'll have some idea of what Warhammer is. Alright, let's talk about the geography and the factions. The Warhammer world is very roughly based on our world when it comes to land masses, though geographic shapes, coastlines, and people are often fairly different. First, let's talk about the World's Edge Mountains, which stretch from most of the known world from north to south. Most of the world is divided between the World's Edge Mountains. It's a huge mountain chain, and most of the dwarfs of the world live in the northern portion of the World's Edge Mountains, but we'll get to them later. Okay, first off, there is no actual main faction or good guys, but most of the players' points of views are from what's called the Empire. It essentially has Renaissance-era technology. It's based off our world's Holy Roman Empire. It has an elective monarchy with an emperor, and they worship a guy called Sigmar, who was a mortal who founded the empire, became the first emperor, and ascended to godhood. Next up is Bretonnia. Bretonnia is pretty much medieval France mixed with King Arthur. It worships a goddess called the Lady of the Lake, although a lot of people think that the Lady of the Lake is actually a wood elf that's tricking them. Bretonnia is kind of stuck in the medieval era. As I said, the Empire has Renaissance-era technology, so there's some flintlock pistols and muskets and mixed with swords and halberds, but with Bretonnia, they still have chainmail, they still live in the 13th century pretty much, although their knights are still very superb. They're even better than the Empire's, and the Empire has pretty good knights. But Bretonnia is still a force to be reckoned with, and it has a lot of good magic too, and blessings from the Lady of the Lake. Once knights drink from the Holy Grail, they'll essentially become supermen. Although the nobles, well, the peasants, if imagine it like medieval squalor, and turn that up to 11, because the peasants essentially have to give up 9/10 of everything that they farm and give it to the nobles. The nobles protect them, yes, and the nobles are very powerful people, and they fight the wars, but the peasants have a shittier life in there than they do anywhere else in the world, pretty much, unless you're like a dark elf slave or something. Okay, let's see. Right by them is Athel Loren. It's where the Wood Elves live. The Wood Elves are a splinter group from the High Elves, which I'll talk about soon. The Wood Elves went to Athel Loren to escape the defeat at the War of Vengeance, which is essentially the old war between the dwarves and the elves, where the dwarves won by a hair's breadth, and then the dwarves kind of kicked the elves out of the old world, and the elves, whatever elves were left, went into Athel Loren, the forest, and they essentially became a splinter faction, the Wood Elves. They are probably the most neutral faction out there. They're even more neutral than the Lizardmen, which I'll talk about soon. But that's really saying something. As long as you don't mess with their home, they won't really mess with you. There is, to the south, Tilia and Estalia. They are pretty much the city-state era Italy and Spain. They hire a lot of mercenaries. They do a lot of exploring, stuff like that. They're pretty neat. A lot of good accents. Okay, let's go north again to above Athol, Lorne, and Bretonnia. This is the mountain range that separates Bretonnia and the Empire, called the Grey Mountains. The Grey Dwarves live there. Not too much else to say about that. Up north, let's go north above the Empire, which is with Kislev. Kislev is essentially Western Russia and Eastern Europe. A lot of horse archers. Their government is based off of a kingdom under an ice sorceress, Katarina, I believe. They worship a god, they worship pretty much the god of bears, Ursun, and they are the first nation to fight against chaos, and I'll talk about chaos in a second. Above them, to the left in the map, is Norska. Norska is where all of the Vikings live, essentially. Norska has a lot of tribesmen that attack the Empire and Kislev and even go exploring themselves, and they worship chaos. They worship pretty much the evil gods, and there's a lot of werewolves up there, a lot of monsters, a lot of mutants as well. They essentially do a lot of raiding. And everything that I have just mentioned is a part of what we call the Old World. The Old World is pretty much northern, central, and eastern Europe of our world. Okay, and I go off the coast. This is pretty much the only place that is not based on a real-world location, called Ulthuan. That is where the High Elves live. Ulthuan is, I believe it's based on the myth of Atlantis for this world, but Ulthuan is an island that is held up by the elven magics, and the High Elves live there, and they pretty much make a good deal of time being isolated, trading a lot though, sailing around the world, practicing their magics over there. But yeah, Ulthuan's pretty much in the is pretty much the Atlantis that is in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Above Norska and Kislev is the Chaos Wastes. That's where chaos and all of the demons and monsters live. I mean, monsters are everywhere in the Warhammer world, but this is where they all originated from. There's a lot of lore there, but just know that this is where the 4 Chaos Gods are powerful, and the 4 Chaos Gods are Khorne, the god of war. There's Tzeentch, the god of trickery and plans and cunning. There's Nurgle, the god of diseases, and there's Slaanesh, the god of unspeakable pleasures. There's pretty much wrath, lust, sloth, and maybe envy. I don't exactly know what Tzeentch is for. He's pretty much extreme, just a very diabolical evil planner. Alright, and now let's go south again. Let's go to the Badlands. The Badlands, well, there's orcs and goblins everywhere in the Warhammer world, pretty much, but this is where most of them live. I mean, of course, they're all over the forest. There's a ton of them everywhere. They're all in the mountains. They're everywhere, but this is pretty much, if they had a country, this would be it. The Badlands are right by the dwarf holds of the mountains. And let's go to the World's Edge Mountains again, where the dwarfs live. The dwarfs used to live all where the Empire and Bretonnia used to be, and they used to live right by the High Elves, but there was a huge war called the War of Vengeance, or the War of the Beard. I made a video on this if you want to go check it out. I'll put a link in the description below. But the dwarves and elves fought pretty much a world war between themselves before humans came into power, and the dwarves won, kicked the elves out of the old world, but then because of this and a few earthquakes, the dwarfs were weakened and they had to retreat back into the World's Edge Mountains, and the humans and orcs and everything like that kind of rose to power now that there was this huge void of power to fill. But the dwarves went back to the World's Edge Mountains, and they live in places called Carracks, or holds in our tongue, and those are essentially fortress cities where they reside. and they're pretty much friends with the humans, or the Empire at least. They do respect Bretonnia, but Sigmar, the god of the Empire, one of his great feats when he was alive was making a pact and friends with the dwarfs because he saved a dwarf king from orcs. Alright, now let's go to the Darklands, which is on the eastern side of the World's Edge Mountains. This is where the hobgoblins and the chaos dwarfs live. Unlike everything else that has chaos in their name, the chaos dwarfs don't actually worship chaos, but they were shaped by chaos. They're slavers. They're a lot like dwarfs in the fact that they're very technologically advanced, but at the same time, they're also far different because they don't worship their ancestors. They practice sorcery, and dwarfs usually hate sorcery, and they have been living there since chaos came into the world and kind of stranded them there. Okay, now let's go to the Mountains of Morn further east. This is where the ogres live, or the ogre kingdoms. The ogres are essentially Mongols that don't ride horses, and but they do a lot of raiding. They're mercenaries for a lot of people. They protect people on the Pilgrim Road, which is essentially the Silk Road between the Old World and where we're going next. They eat everything. They're very powerful people, but they also extract tolls, and they're pretty greedy as well. And above the Mountains of Morn is the steppes, and that's where a lot of chaos raiders on horses live. That's pretty much what they are. A lot of them are called kurgans and stuff like that, and they follow a lot of chaos hordes that come out of the chaos wastes. Okay, let's go further east to Cathay, which is what we would usually consider where China would be. Cathay is pretty much medieval or ancient China, whose leader is called the Dragon Emperor, and it's highly implied that he is actually an immortal vampire. Alright, so the Kingdom of Ind below that, not much to know about this country except it's full of jungle. Nippon, which is their world version of Japan, pretty much a few islands off the coast. Let's see, let's go back to below the Old World with Araby. Not a very creative name, but Araby is essentially the Middle East. It's not exactly where the Middle East would be in our world. It's on the left side of essentially Africa. There's a lot of sultans there, genies, a lot of gold, essentially Arabian Night stuff. To the east of that is the lands of the dead, or Nehekara, which would be Egypt, and that is where the Tomb Kings live. And the Tomb Kings are essentially mummified, a land of mummified people or skeletons. They're a pretty cool faction, pretty powerful too, just can't really replenish their numbers a lot. Let's see, and below that, and pretty much actually Araby, Nehekara, and all the jungles south of that are called the Southlands. The Southlands is the whole continent that is below the Old World continent, and below Araby and Nehekara is where a few of the lizardmen live, and a lot of primitive humans, very primitive orcs and goblins, and maybe a high elf fortress or two. But the lizardmen that live there are not the main faction of lizardmen, although they are connected to them. Alright, let's go over to past Ulthuan to Nagaroth. Nagaroth is pretty much North America. It's where the United States and Canada would be. Nagaroth is where the Dark Elves live. The Dark Elves have been here. They, like the High Elves, were kicked out of the Old World. The Dark Elves were kicked out of Ulthuan. And they live here, and they pretty much just plot vengeance against Ulthuan and go around the world and invade things and collect people for slaves and stuff like that. It's very cold, very dreary. A lot of mountains and forests, as you'd think, for pre-colonist America. Below that is Lustria. Lustria is essentially the South America of that world, and that is where the lizardmen mainly reside. They have a lot of temple cities there, full of ziggurats. The lizardmen are pretty much one of the most neutral factions in the Warhammer world. The only reason why they're a little bit less neutral than the Wood Elves is because the Lizardmen really hate chaos, the evil force in the world, and they also really hate Skaven as well. So while they wouldn't exactly help good guys, they really hate the bad guys a lot. Because the Lizardmen are pretty much the guys that maintain order in the world as far as they see it. The Lizardmen also worship the Old Ones, which are the gods that originally showed up to the Warhammer world and started making all the races and shaping them and shaping the continents. The Lizardmen were their first servants. Once they left the world when Chaos showed up, the Lizardmen try to do their best to follow the plans of the Old Ones that they left behind. So that is a very quick rundown of Warhammer with the landmasses and the factions. I hope you enjoyed the video. It was very quick. I'm going to make another video very soon, and that one's going to be far more in-depth if you want to watch that one, but for now, I hope you're satisfied. Also, I realized that I accidentally mispronounced Cathay earlier and called it Kathy. I apologize for that. But still, if you liked the video, please like, subscribe, or comment. Thank you so much, guys. Alright, see you.